Welcome to another vintage day. Today we're in the Dalles, Oregon at the old St. Peter's Landmark Church, which was fortunately saved from being demolished back in the 1970s. Thank heavens, because this is a real gem of a church. There is so much going on in this beautiful little church. It's well worth the trip off the freeway. It has the most incredible stained glass from the Povey Brothers, very famous stained glass makers, and the church is completely filled with it. There's also incredible stencil work by Braash, and that is something else that is quite unusual. And he was very famous. He did many churches throughout the United States. So I encourage you to come here and take a look at this church. I think you will be pleasantly surprised. And as we continue in this video, you're going to see a lot of little details that you don't see in most churches. Come with me, let's take a look. Built between 1897 and 98, the St. Peter's Catholic Church was dedicated on St. Patrick's Day, 1898. On the right side of the photo is the old St. Peter's Church. In the background, you can see the construction of the church that we are in today. This was the fourth version of the St. Peter's Catholic Church. In the early 1970s, they built an even larger facility, and this church was slated to be demolished. Fortunately, a group of people raised enough money to save it. This is a Gothic Revival red brick church with a steeple that rises 176 feet. It was such a benchmark that the steamboat captains of the Columbia River used the steeple as a navigational tool. The Serene Madonna was carved from the keel of a ship sunk off the San Francisco coast in the early 1850s. It was a gift to the church in memory of a relative that was saved from the shipwreck. The beautiful sanctuary was painted with portrait medallions and stenciling by the German artist Braash. He completed his work over several months in 1954 and 1955. He stated that it was his life's ambition to paint a perfect Christ head, one that would be universally accepted. Braash was orphaned at the age of 9 and placed under apprenticeship to a fresco artist in Germany. He continued his studies in Munich and Berlin. In Windsor, England, he was appointed instructor of art at St. Mark's School. He then looked to America. He did considerable work for the Franciscan, Benedictine, Dominican, and secular fathers in the monasteries. His work can be found in many parts of the United States. He was far from the average person's conception of an artist. You would usually find him in his overalls, casually walking around the scaffolding. Unlike Michelangelo, who refused to have visitors while he worked, Braash was happy to stop his work and talk with visitors. Known as the Tiffany of the Northwest, the Povey Brothers studio of Portland, Oregon made 6 rose windows and 34 stained glass windows for the church. Their windows were considered to have extraordinary quality and beauty. They used imported glass from Europe, and the firm's work was virtually unequaled in the Pacific Northwest. They were noted for their use of jewels, a small, thickly cut faceted piece of glass in rich colors, and for several other types of textures, including kokomo, crackle, rippled, granite textured, and machine rolled. The faces that you see in the windows of the cherubs are said to be modeled after the daughters of one of the Povey brothers. The studio was active from 1888 to 1928. The church has a Kilgan pipe organ made of rare tigerwood that was installed in 1927. It has 470 pipes. You may not be familiar with the Kilgan Pipe Organ Company, but they also installed organs in Carnegie Hall and St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York. Speaking of organs, have you ever seen a collapsible pump organ? This one is from the 1880s. The legs actually fold down so it can be tied on the back of a horse and buggy. It was used by the local priest as he traveled from parish to parish. The small metal holders on the back sides of the pews displayed the names of those who had paid pew rent. In the small town where I grew up, everyone knew their seating in the church. No one would have ever considered sitting in another family's pew. It was the unwritten rule. The pews were also outfitted with fancy umbrella holders. Another feature was the spring-loaded hat holders. When this church was built, it was common for all men to wear a hat. Space was at a premium in the entry of the church, so the ability to hang your hat at the pew was a luxury. For me, Old St. Peter's Landmark is a place to step back into old-world elegance. You feel like you've been transported into some small town in Europe. The workmanship of the people who created this magnificent building is something to be admired. It really does feel like you are sitting in a jewel box. This landmark is in the Dalles, Oregon, and is open free to the public for tours and is available for rent. All denominations are welcome. I hope you enjoyed our tour today. Please join me again as I find treasures and stories from our past while living another vintage day. A place where we can experience a vintage lifestyle together.